All right. So our next speaker is Gabe Roxby. Gabe has been a field forester with the Forest Society since 2012, when he graduated from the University of New Hampshire with an MS in natural resources and a focus in forestry. He attained his New Hampshire forestry license in 2019 and works with the other foresters on the Forest Society staff to manage their nearly 60,000 acres of land throughout the state. Gabe previously worked for the Student Conservation Association, building and maintaining trails and educating elementary school students about the joys of science. He enjoys learning about the complexity of our forests in New Hampshire and talking about sustainable forest management with anyone who will listen. So here we are, ready to listen. So Gabe is going to be talking about retaining ash on our landscape, the importance of seedlings and seed years.
What do I point it at? Oh, wonderful. Oh, I got to stay by this. Thank you for that introduction. So I'm going to be focusing a little bit on white ash. The talk that Matt gave, it dovetails into that when we're talking about managing our forests for resiliency. This is kind of looking into one way that we can do that. So just a quick outline. I'm going to start with talking a little bit about the challenges that our ash are facing in our forests, which are somewhat dire. I'm going to do a quick review of emerald ash borer as a pest and go into a little bit about the biocontrols that have been released just as a background. And I'm also going to talk about what I feel is an opportunity for landowners and land managers that we have here to make a real difference in the conservation and preservation of ash across our landscape. I'll talk a little bit about some of the recent thoughts we've had at the Forest Society in regards to this, and then outline a specific project that we've just gotten started with and are going to continue with this winter on Mount Monadnock itself. And then I'll end with some take-home messages on ash and hopefully time for questions and a discussion. So I wanted to start a little bit by introducing the Forest Society. So I'm a forester with the Society for the Protection of New Hampshire Forests. We sometimes call ourselves a forest society when we want to save our breath. So we are a nonprofit, member-supported land trust with 10,000 members statewide. I'm sure some of you are members. Thank you for your support. And we do have a table here at the conference that I'm happy to talk to folks at. I'll be here all day if you're curious about more about the Forest Society. So our focus is on land protection, education, advocacy, forestry, and stewardship. And I've got our mission statement up here because I think it speaks to a little bit what we think of ourselves as the core of our organization is this dual mission. It's both focused on the wise use of our forests. So we believe in active management through timber harvesting. We believe timber harvesting can have many benefits, including providing income for a landowner to retain their forests as forests. We just heard about how important that is. If we can keep our forests as forests, that's going to provide all these ecosystem services and co-benefits. And oftentimes periodic timber harvesting can help a landowner earn income to do that. Timber harvesting produces a stream of renewable forest products that we use every day. We're surrounded by them right now. I see lots of wood furniture here, and it also reduces the need for non-renewable products that we would otherwise use. Forestry can be used to intentionally create a diverse, resilient forest. Thinking about forestry and thinking about the talk that Matt just gave, you can be intentional about how you cut trees and really try to result in forests that are healthier and more resilient. So in terms of the balance, we own 60,000 acres in New Hampshire. We also have conservation easements on an additional 130,000 acres. Those are lands that we don't own, but we hold easements on that prevent development and subdivision and that sort of thing. But the land that we own, 60,000 acres, about 2/3 of that we consider available for timber harvesting, and we periodically cut trees there. And then the additional 1/3, it's steep, it's wet, it's areas that are unique. We set these areas aside, so we try to balance, active management and areas that are best left alone for nature to prevail. So I'm going to get right into the challenges that ash is facing by talking about emerald ash borer. Many of you are probably familiar with it, but just a quick background. I'm not an entomologist, but I'll do my best, and maybe you can ask Sam a little bit more. I'm sure he knows a lot. But so it's an invasive forest pest native to Asia. It was first noted in the United States in 2002 in Michigan, and it's rapidly spread to over 35 states and 5 Canadian provinces since that time. It was first found in New Hampshire in March of 2013. Likely the method that this pest came to the United States on is in solid wood packing materials. A little bit on the quick info on the biology of emerald ash borer. The adults lay their eggs in the summer on the bark of ash trees. They hatch, burrow into the tree and live in the cambium and the phloem of the tree, eating those parts of the tree. So these are some pictures of the adults. Here are the larvae that are found in the tree. In the fall, the larvae will excavate a pupal chamber and they overwinter as larvae in the bole of the tree. In the next spring, so this is a picture of how ash trees actually die from this insect. The larvae create these S-shaped galleries, and it just results in the girdling of the tree. The tree can't send nutrients up and down, so it results in the death of the tree. The next year, in the spring and summer, the larvae will pupate and emerge as adults, and they feed in the adults eat the leaves of the ash trees. They don't really do much damage to the tree that way. It's really the larvae that have the biggest impact, and that are the thing that's actually killing our ash trees. This is a very devastating insect. It kills over 99% of all of our true ash species in North America. In New Hampshire, those species are first and foremost white ash. That's our most common ash species, but also brown and black ash. That's the same species found in wetlands, and green ash found along major rivers. Trees larger than about 2 inches in diameter are vulnerable to this insect. The adults prefer laying eggs on the bark of ash trees that has some furrowing to it. So smoother barked younger trees can escape this damage. And I'm going to be talking a bit more about that later. This the picture we've got up there of the tree, the mature tree is the most likely way you're going to notice emerald ash borer, which is the blonding on the trees. The woodpeckers actually come and seek out the larvae and chip off the outer bark, and it'll result in the trees being this light tan color, and it can really jump out, especially this time of year. Oops. So really our best, it's extremely unfortunate, but there's not really any hope for our ash trees resisting this pest. It has really spread rapidly and resulted in widespread mortality for our ash. The best long-term hope that we have is through the use of biocontrol insects. We all know actually all about larval parasitoids and egg parasitoids from this morning. But these are small wasps that have been intentionally released by entomologists after extensive testing, and they lay their eggs in the larvae and eggs of emerald ash borer. And I actually have a little display from New Hampshire Division of Forest and Lands over there. If you want to see, they're quite small. There's some examples of the wasps over there. I can have that at the Forest Society table as well for later. But this is really our best long-term hope for ash being able to still be in our forests in 100 years, is that these insects can assimilate themselves into the ecosystem and provide some management of some ability to control the emerald ash borer. And the hope is that there's not really any hope that these will stop the initial killing wave of emerald ash borer, but after that wave comes through, perhaps there can be some stabilization effect that these provide a viable predator for emerald ash borer. So those were the adults. This is some pictures of the larvae of the parasitoids. You can see they're quite small. These are emerald ash borer eggs, and the dark ones have are the parasitic wasp that lays their eggs in the egg. Those are parasitized eggs. This is how the entomologists from the state will disperse these. They put them out in little medicine containers, and it's a slow process, but it has shown a bunch of promise. These things are established into the ecosystem. They're just not established at a high enough rate to provide significant control at this point. So I mentioned that emerald ash borer really doesn't affect small trees, and this really represents a critical opportunity for landowners and land managers to think about the ash on our landscape and put a significant effort into focusing on the small ash we have here. It's almost a foregone conclusion that almost all of our large ash will be lost from this insect, but if we can sustain young ash on our landscape, as that young ash grows up, perhaps the biocontrol populations will be high enough that they can then grow into mature trees, that we can have an ecosystem that's a little bit more back in balance. So young ash trees are actually quite important right now, especially in the Monadnock region. The initial front of emerald ash borer is really moving through the Monadnock region right now. So these young ash really present a very important opportunity. So if we're gonna manage our forests, and our goal is to favor young ash or regenerate ash or encourage young ash, we really have to understand a little bit of the silvics of white ash itself. And silvics is a term used by foresters just to talk about the life history, the growth, and the ecology of a tree species. I'm going to be focusing on white ash today. That's our most common species on the landscape, and it's one that you can have the most impact on if you're managing upland forests. Ash trees are dioecious, meaning individuals are either male or female. About half of female ash trees will produce, during a bumper seed year, about half of female ash trees will produce lots of seed. Seed years only occur about on average every 1 to 3 years. Our last large seed year for ash here in New Hampshire was in 2017 to 2018. So it's actually been quite a while. So it can go as long as 5 years, or that sometimes you can have back-to-back seed years. And these are for those of you that aren't familiar with the concept of a mast year, this is a strategy that trees take to overwhelm seed predators. If during 1 year they produce an ungodly amount of seeds, they can overwhelm the predators of those seeds. And then in intervening years, produce little or no seeds, which would crash the seed predator population. So it's a strategy to get their seeds in the soil and get them not eaten, so they can germinate into trees. Sorry. So that's seeds. Germination of seeds is another thing that we need to think about. So viable seeds have a rather specific germination requirements, actually. And to be honest, I've been learning a lot about this in the last couple of weeks. So white ash seeds require a period of warm stratification followed by a period of cold stratification. So we had a big white ash seed year this fall. Those seeds, if they didn't get their period of warm this fall, are going to get that period next summer, followed by the following winter. And so we wouldn't expect most of these seeds to actually germinate until the spring of 2024. So that is it's important information. If you're going to be managing or thinking about ash and trying to do something, that is critical information that's understood, because otherwise you might go out there next summer and say, where are all the ash seedlings? They're still dormant. They still need to break that dormancy with these cold stratification periods. Seeds develop best in about 45% of full sunlight, although they do develop in the shady understory of forests as well. They tend to germinate a bit better in mineral soil, but they also have been shown to develop well in leaf litter and other soil substrates. Ash seedlings are quite tolerant of shade initially, but they need some sunlight within the first 10 years of their life. Otherwise, they're not going to make it. So on Mount Monadnock, we have a project that we've just started. So as soon as we started, thinking more about this ash problem and what we could do to help, we looked through our inventory data and looked for our best ash stands. So these are areas where white ash is a strong component. It's on good, moist, northern hardwood soils that would favor the growth of ash. These are often found on the bottom of slopes where nutrients settle. And so we kind of queried our database for our best ash stands, and we found several on Mount Monadnock. And just a little background on Mount Monadnock, the Forest Society owns about 4,500 acres of Mount Monadnock. We lease that to the state as Monadnock State Park, and they manage the recreational aspects of that property. We manage the forestry and the habitat parts, and the lower slopes, about 2,000 acres on the lower slopes, we consider available for forest management and cutting trees. The upper slopes are an ecological reserve where we set aside and let that grow. So we have two areas on Mount Monadnock that we noticed were really just amazing ash stands and great sites for trying to promote young ash. Almost all of the trees in these areas are about 10 to 22 inches in diameter. There's not many young ash in these areas. Almost all the trees out here are of a vulnerable size to emerald ash borer. So our idea was let's do something. Let's use our knowledge of the silvics of white ash. Let's use our forestry knowledge to do something, whatever, to try to regenerate ash, to try to encourage young ash on this site as a refuge for the species before emerald ash borer comes through. Emerald ash borer on these sites is not causing widespread mortality, but it very well could in the next 5 years. This fall might very well be the last mass seed year for ash on this site. So this fall represented a really good opportunity for us to think about this and try to do something. And we're hoping to do a harvest aimed at this winter and possibly next winter. So we spent some time out there in September. I mentioned that ash trees are male and female. What I didn't mention is that females are a lot less common than males. Research indicates that only about 1 in 7 ash trees are female, which makes them really important. If you're gonna hope to have lots of seed on your landscape, you really need both males and females. And certainly some types of forestry, you might retain those by chance, but we decided to head out there for a day and see if we could spot and flag female ash trees so that when we do our timber harvest, we can make sure we retain a mixture of males and females. We learned a little bit about how to identify. We dragged Matt out there, how to identify females, and it's not quite as easy as we thought in September. So our idea was, let's just get some binoculars. Let's go out there. Let's look up and see if we can see the seeds flag female ash trees. There's a lot of leaves in a forest that are in between our eyes and the ash trees, so it's quite difficult. And we spent about an hour. I didn't find any, and I had a kind of a sore neck. So, this is what it looked like for us out there. We came up with a little bit of a better system if you're going to be doing this in September, which is some of the seeds had already fallen, and so to look on the forest floor for seeds, they tended not to fall super far from the tree. So if you find seeds on the ground, then and this was a system came up with by one of our volunteers, lay on your back with the binoculars to see if you could spot the female ash trees. And this system worked much better, a lot more efficient. We were able to flag many more female ash trees this way. And the ratio of 1 to 7 seemed to hold. That's a fairly uncertain ratio, as I understand it, but that seemed to hold based on our experience. So since that day, after all the leaves have fallen, I've learned that the seeds and the stalks, the seeds persist on the tree after leaves have fallen. So if you are excited about doing this, now is actually a wonderful time to go out and look at your ash trees. You'll still be able to see, it's a little blurry perhaps, but the picture on the right, you can see there, it just looks a little fuzzy. And those are the stalks of the ash seeds that are still remaining on the tree. You don't even need binoculars if you have good eyesight. So it can be quite efficient to flag female ash trees this way. I'm not sure how many more months these will persist, but just a note that we've learned. So what are our next steps on Mount Monadnock? We have a harvest planned, and it potentially could be moving up to this winter. And the goal is to regenerate white ash on those sites. So what type of cutting would be a good intensity and pattern of cutting to have white ash be successful? And we're looking at kind of two different methods. One would be a shelterwood harvest that would look like this. This isn't a pine stand, so obviously not, we wouldn't get ash back here, but this represents kind of the intensity that we would leave on a site to put a bunch of light on the ground, but still retain enough trees in the overstory to provide some shade and the ability to cast seed into the future. If you did a harvest like this, the seeds would probably get enough sunlight to be successful germinating and growing up. And there can be also some advantages to harvesting. If that results in some soil disturbance, that might drive the seeds in a little bit. And there's some research that shows that you can get a more favorable germination rate under those circumstances. So this is a technique that's often recommended to regenerate ash. Group selection that Matt talked about with basically small patch cuts is also another recommended method. And in terms of timing, we're looking at either a fall harvest after a massed seed year can be beneficial, or if you already have seed in the understory or seedlings in the understory, a winter harvest to sort of protect those areas, especially if you have seedlings. A winter harvest would be the recommended way. So these are just some photos of shelterwood harvests. So that first one was this picture is you can see the forwarder in the back there. This is active when this harvest is happening. This is a picture of a different shelterwood harvest several years after. You can see the thick regeneration, enough sunlight really hit that area to result in a really dense flush of trees and shrubs in those areas. And then, after 10 or 15 years, your shelterwood might look something like this with young, hopefully ash trees in the understory. So I have a couple. So I'm going to wrap up now and just kind of talk about a couple take-home messages. The first is that ash seed years are important. If we want to make a difference with this species, we want to establish young ash on our landscape that can be a refuge, that can escape damage from the emerald ash borer and provide the genetic diversity of ash on our landscape, the trees on our landscape that could be used for future breeding programs. We really need to think about ash seed years. These are important, and we might not get too many more of them. If you have areas with ash seedlings already in the understory, these are also very important. You've already been successful at germination. Look out for these are, and manage for these, encourage these areas. It could make a real difference. Don't assume that as the ash in your forest die, it will automatically be replaced by seedlings in the understory. This could happen, but in the areas we were working with, there was really very little ash in the understory, and one of the stands looked like it had already been, some of the ashes already died, and there really weren't any seedlings there. So don't take it for granted that ash is going to come back after the large ash trees die. Forestry and careful timber harvesting can make a difference. If we use our knowledge of this species, we can really tailor what we do out there for ash. And I guess the last point, that I'm kind of a science person, but when we were out in the forests, it kind of occurred to one of our volunteers that this might be one of the last times that any of us are ever out in like this beautiful ash stand. I don't know what it's like to walk through a chestnut forest. Chestnut is gone from our landscape, but we have an opportunity over the next somewhat short amount of years to experience these areas, and just don't take them for granted. They're a dying breed, and if through this work we can retain ash on our landscape, that's great. But it's going to be a long time until a tree like that's a 49-inch diameter white ash that I came across. It's gonna be a long time until trees like that can grow back in our forest. So, take some time and appreciate these areas, because they're going to be gone. So. Happy to take questions, and if folks have observations or any discussion about ash, I'm happy to entertain that as well.
So we're actually at the time we're supposed to go on a break, but we'll take one or two questions, and I want to remind anyone who's listening over Zoom that you can type your questions to the chat.
So if this is for both Matt and Gabe, you both mentioned group selection patch cuts. What is your size? What kind of size acreage are you talking about for each patch?
So what would a group selection cut be?
Yeah.
I think you'll get different answers from different foresters. I tend to think of,
That's why I'm asking.
yeah, well, I can answer them. I tend to think of openings larger than 10 acres as clear cuts. Openings between maybe 1 or 2 acres and 10 acres as patch cuts, and openings under an acre or 2 as group selection cuts.
I would agree with that. The other thing about group selection that I think we often don't talk about is that you're treating those groups, removing groups of trees up to an acre or 2. You're also tending in between those trees, doing some thinning. That's the real group selection. Otherwise, you're just doing what I would consider small patch.
One more question. and then-
How old does a female tree need to be before it starts to seed?
Before it starts to seed, oh, I don't have that information, but it's probably at least 30 years, I guess.
Thank you.